When Le Bon wrote about crowds, he wasn't describing people standing together. He was describing a psychological transformation, the moment when individual minds dissolve into a collective one. A crowd forms when three forces align: anonymity, emotional intensity, and suggestibility. When they converge, the individual no longer thinks independently. The crowd begins to think as one. Responsibility weakens, emotion spreads faster than reason. Ideas are absorbed without examination. In this state, nuance disappears. Simple explanations dominate. Symbols replace arguments. A crowd is not a demographic, it's a psychological organism. And once this organism forms, the individual mind changes completely. And that change begins with the disappearance of individual psychology. Alone, a person can reflect, doubt, and consider long-term consequences. Inside a crowd, these abilities fade. The individual mind is shaped by memory, experience, and personal values. The crowd mind is shaped by instinct, fast, emotional, and primitive. This is why intelligent people can behave irrationally in crowds. Their intelligence doesn't vanish, it is simply overridden. In a crowd, identity weakens. People become interchangeable parts of a larger emotional system. And to understand why this happens, we must examine the forces that shape the crowd. Because the crowd mind does not emerge by accident. Every crowd is built in three psychological forces. Anonymity. When people feel unidentifiable, restraint disappears. Consequences feel distant. Hidden impulses rise. Contagion. Emotion spreads instantly. Fear, anger, excitement, passed from one mind to another as if the crowd shares a single nervous system. Suggestibility. Inside a crowd, confidence replaces evidence. Repetition replaces reasoning. The crowd imitates instead of evaluating. When these forces act together, individuality dissolves and emotion takes control. And emotion is the true ruler of every crowd. Crowds are governed entirely by emotion, exaggerated, unstable, and contagious. A small concern becomes panic. A minor grievance becomes fury. Enthusiasm turns into fanatic devotion. Crowd emotions shift rapidly. They are triggered by symbols, rumors, gestures, and tone, not facts. Crowds believe quickly. A confident claim overrides evidence. Emotion determines truth. And once a belief settles, contradiction becomes hostility. When emotion dominates belief, it also reshapes morality. Crowds do not possess morality in the individual sense. Their behavior is driven by emotion, not principle. Morality becomes fluid. Acts that would feel wrong alone becomes justified in the collective. Responsibility dissolves. Crowds reduce morality to absolutes, good or evil, friend or enemy. And because their moral compass is emotional, crowds are capable of extremes, violence and sacrifice, destruction or unity. And the same emotional force that shapes morality also shapes belief. Crowds do not reason their way into beliefs. They absorb them. Simple ideas survive. Complexity dies. Beliefs are held with absolute certainty. Doubt is treated as weakness. Emotion, fear, hope, anger, pride determines what feels true. Once accepted, crowds' beliefs becomes rigid, extreme, and intolerant of contradiction. And these beliefs require direction. Crowds do not guide themselves. They require leaders. Leaders influence crowds through conviction. Hesitation destroys authority. They speak in simple, decisive statements. They activate emotion, not reflection. The crowd imitates the leader instead of evaluating them. Without leaders, the crowd is energy without aim. With leaders, that energy can reshape societies. And the tools leaders use are the same tools used in mass persuasion. Crowds cannot be persuaded through logic. They respond to techniques that bypass reasoning and trigger emotion. Affirmation. A bold claim delivered with confidence becomes truth. Repetition. Familiarity becomes belief. Contagion. When many appear convinced, others follow. Prestige. The authority of the messenger outweighs the message. Propaganda succeeds not because people are ignorant, but because it aligns perfectly with crowd psychology. And when these forces enter politics, the consequences multiply. Crowds play a decisive role in revolutions, not through analysis but through emotion. Revolutions erupt when collective emotion reaches a breaking point. Crowds accept political ideas only in simplified form. Freedom versus oppression, people versus elite. Leaders reduce complexity into slogans and symbols. Crowds possess immense destructive power. They can dismantle institutions overnight, but their ability to build stable systems is limited. Force comes from the crowd. Structure comes from elites that follow. And if crowds are so powerful, the final question becomes unavoidable. Resisting the crowd is not instinctive. It requires conscious effort. Crowds exist everywhere, in politics, online networks, and shared emotional waves. Awareness creates distance. Distance restores control. To resist emotional contagion, slow your thinking. A single pause breaks the rhythm the crowd depends on. Reclaim personal responsibility. Ask yourself, would I do this alone? Seek complexity. Crowds survive on simplification. Recognize leaders who speak to emotion instead of intellect. Build identity on principles, not groups. And remember, crowds forget quickly. Memory turns experience into defense. Resisting the crowd is not isolation. It is conscious self-governance. And in an age of constant emotional pressure, the discipline of remaining individual is more important than ever.